Hello, Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Hope you're all safe, sound, and healthy. And we need to go back to the matter at hand. And that is, Trump, where the Americans are complaining that he is the most. I think the Americans really need to be, they need to be. I forgot the word, imagine. When you actually erase all the brainwashing and all the conditioning that's been done to somebody's mind. Yeah, that needs to be done to them. Because I am really sick and tired of every American saying that, our president is the most powerful man in the entire world, and he's doing this and he's doing that. You know what? He is not the most powerful man in the entire world. If anything, he's the henchman of the British government. And I'm surprised that you still haven't grasped on that. America is just as every bit a colony of Britain as Australia or Canada is, okay? The only difference is that the Americans, like other former colonies, like Pakistan, India, the Commonwealth, and other countries, is under the illusion that it has taken its freedom and that it has its own sovereignty, but it is still under the British. In fact, as I've said a million times, the American government is basically delegated by the British government to continue with its works post-colonization to ensure that these colonies are still within control and that they do not ever secure their own 100% complete sovereignty. Pakistan is just a case in point. And so America is not the most powerful country in the world. It is the right-hand man of the dawn of the global mafia. So if by the dawn of the global mafia and its henchmen you're talking about power, then yes, okay, we'll agree that he is the most powerful henchman of the dawn of the global mafia in the world, okay? But I mean, you know what? Biggest fool you for not even realizing that. So what if Trump is making a fool out of you? So what if Trump is making a fool out of is embarrassing your country? You know what? You deserve it. Like, have you not even realized that since the creation of America, it has spent 80 to 95% of its existence in instigating, lobbying, and fighting in wars all over the world. Your latest, biggest attribute being the 9/11 charade, that false flag operation that allowed the American government to put into place the Patriot Act, based upon which all your privacy, and as a result, all our privacy, has gone to hell. It has opened the doors for the whole world's governments now that any illegitimate government or any army organization or any military intelligence organization can now very simply bypass the Constitution, the Privacy Acts in every single country in the world, and illegally, with great confidence, wiretap us, hack into our apps, hack into our mobiles, hack into our accounts. Yeah, who opened the door? The American government. Your President Bush, who was not just any president, but he was actually one of the biggest parts of your American deep state. He was the American deep state that was put to the front. He was part of your Americans' weapon lobbying. He was part of every single lobbying that you could ever think of. The amount of wars that man instigated through his 9/11 charade, and the amount of money that he and his lobbies or lobbyists have earned, the amount of money the deep state in America, or the establishment even in America, have earned. And please, anybody who tries to negate the fact that there is no deep state or establishment in America, don't be a fool. I don't care who you are, but it's a very, very foolish, very fatally foolish idea to entertain that, oh, no, actually, you know what? There is an establishment in the UK and in America, but they are not, at the end of the day, powerful enough to dictate, oh, yes, they are. Case in point, what's going on in America, what's going on in Britain, you think it's the people right now? It's not the people. It is that very establishment that is manipulating the public. Misinformation, disinformation, false narratives, that is what the deep state does. That is why it's called the deep state, because it's hidden deep in the background and it acts as if at the end of the day it will kowtow to public opinion. But while pretending to, or while apparently kowtowing to the public pressure or public opinion, they are literally doing their thing right there in the background. They are setting things up, they're aligning things up, they're getting things done. So, yeah, I think we can understand that the public in the Western world is given the illusion of power, but they don't actually have that power. Whereas in countries like ours, we aren't even given the illusion of power because we are under no illusions. We know that's the difference, right? And so this is why, this is why, even when I go back now to this whole Canadian thing where Canada prides itself in being the most welcoming country in the world, and it always opens its doors to immigrants and to refugees and all. Well, first of all, it's a huge, vast land. It needs developing, and you don't have enough people, and that is why you're always ready to import people, number one. Number two, for the longest time, Canada was treated as a foothold by immigrants from where they basically, their end destination was America. Let's accept that. Many people used Canada as a stepping stone to go towards America, right? Now, here we are sitting here talking about how the Canadians who pride themselves on their welcoming stance are now they're so fed up of the Indians. And the only people they're basically talking against are the Indians. So I can understand that they may not actually have a racist problem here. But what they do have, and what they have finally admitted or accepted, is the identity crisis. That the way the Indians are behaving in Canada, encroaching upon the existent culture, which Canada has a very quiet culture, to be honest. It has a decent culture. It has the kind of culture which is basically, again, remember, the whole Western world has borrowed Islam. Your whole society, your whole constitution, your whole legal, social framework is one way or the other, it's based on Islam. And so, yeah, it is very identical to Muslim countries where we are essentially a quiet place where we do not have all these loud festivities. We do not encroach upon other people's privacy in the way that the Indians have been doing. We do not go and turn public areas into some sort of a parade that is not in any Muslim culture. And so, yeah, we can, as Muslims, we can understand that it's a nuisance and it's encroachment, and consideration for others is key. So the Indian behavior has been the very opposite of consideration. Their statues that they've been placing in front of the airport and this and that, okay, I understand. But essentially, again, it's an identity crisis that the Canadians are feeling. They feel like we are not in our country anymore. Yeah. Now you see, normally I would sympathize with the Canadians or even the Australians or the Americans if they ever talk about such things. But you know why the whole world doesn't give a hoot about these complaints? Is because you, the Canadians, the Americans, the Australians, you have done the exact same thing to the Aborigines, to the Native Americans, the Red Indians that you called them. Yeah. They had an identity crisis because you came in and swooped on them exactly in the same way. You promoted your religion and your culture in exactly the same way. You decided that you owned the country, and you decided that you didn't need their permission to do whatever the heck it was that you wanted to. If anything, you pushed them to the side, you exterminated them, you committed mass-scale genocide because they already had a very small population, so it was easy for you people to exterminate them, and even now they're living on their own land as strangers. Minorities. The real owners of Canada, of America, of Australia, New Zealand are living in their own country like strangers. Yeah. Irony of ironies, seriously? Do you people think that you have the right to talk about identity crisis and about how you feel as if you're not living in your own country anymore, and how you feel that that your country is being taken away from you, that your identity is being lost. Are you serious right now? This is why the world doesn't give a hoot about your whinings, because the world thinks, hang on, you don't even have the right to complain because you're right now doing the exact same thing. Where are the Native Americans? In a reservation. What do you mean, reservation? Are they wild animals that needed to be put in a safari park? It's their land. You invaded their land without permission, without authority. You thought that because you were larger in number, you could just come in, do whatever you want. You made the infrastructure without their permission. You made homes without their permission. You made a government without their permission. You did everything, and you made this land yours. And you are even now, today, as we speak, endorsing Israel to do exactly the same to Palestine. But you are complaining about Indians pushing their culture and their 10-foot tall statues of their gods on you, and that you're thinking that you now do not feel like you're living in your own country, that you feel like strangers in your own country? Are you serious? If it was actually your own country, we would be 100% with you. Seriously. For example, if you were in Europe, because that is where you came from, if you were in Europe in your own countries, if the Israelis were fighting for their land in Europe, which is where they came from, because they are not Israelis, as we all know, the so-called Israelis are European Jews that were persecuted by you, your own ancestors, your own families, your own relatives in Europe and America. They were not given a place to stay. They were removed from their own homes, their own lands, their own countries in Europe. They were given refuge in Muslim countries, the same Muslim countries that they're now attacking. The countries in the Northern African belt, the countries in the Middle Eastern belt, the countries in the Gulf belt, the countries in the Central Asian belt. All these Muslim countries that gave them refuge, when you, the Christians, were persecuting them, when you fanatics and extremists were killing them and removing them from their own homes, they were Europeans just like you. But because they were Jews, you persecuted them. They weren't Arabs. They weren't a different race. They were one of you. They were white Caucasians. They were white people. They were Europeans, born and bred. Look at their DNA. They are Europeans. They didn't even speak Hebrew. They didn't even understand Hebrew. They spoke Yiddish. They had to learn Hebrew, for crying out loud, just to create that identification, just to prove to the world that, yeah, no, we are Israelis. They literally had to learn Arabic and Hebrew. So it's again one of you. It's you white people that are trying to invade Palestine. You white people, you invaded Canada, you invaded America, you invaded Australia and New Zealand, and you dare to call them your own countries, and now you're endorsing your own European Jews to invade Palestine. But, oh, God forbid that the Indians come with their 10-foot tall gods and give us an identity crisis in Canada. Like, seriously. Again, we would 100% be on your side. We would sympathize with you and empathize with you if you were in your own countries in Europe and complaining. For example, do you see Indians in England doing such a thing? No. They're living according to the British norms, right? Do you see any other race in England doing much the same as you're complaining? And remember, in England or in other European countries, those countries are small. They're pretty small compared to your country. And over there, even though there are pockets, there's Chinatown, there's Southall, there are these pockets in England where there are a concentration of immigrants. You have Sri Lankans, you have Bangladeshis, you have a concentration of Indians and Pakistanis and all. And still, you will not see that kind of encroachment, the kind that you are complaining about in Canada. Why? Because it's understood that, okay, this is the British, it's their own country. They have their own norms, they have their own laws and everything. Okay, they need to live accordingly. But in America and in Canada and in Australia and New Zealand, it is understood that even you do not belong there. It's not your land. And if you can go and do whatever you want to, then anybody can go and do whatever they want to. Just because you invaded these countries and you set up your politics there and you set up shop there, you think that you own these countries. You do not. The owners of these countries still exist. Albeit you have almost exterminated them, you've rendered them extinct, but they still exist. The whole world unconsciously, not even without thinking, but just unconsciously, the whole world automatically acknowledges the fact that the Canadians, the Americans, the Australians, they don't own these countries. They're themselves immigrants, they're sons of immigrants, they're daughters of immigrants, they're grandchildren of immigrants, they're all immigrants and they're all invaders, and that the actual owners of these countries are right now living in an identity crisis as strangers, as minorities in their own countries, without rights, I might add, without rights. And so it becomes a big deal when a Maori politician comes and she very loudly identifies herself as a Maori. Suddenly it's an uproar. And you're like, oh, what's she doing? What's she doing? She's reclaiming her land, is what she's doing. She's reminding you that you are the unwelcome intruders in her land. Seriously, don't give us that crap. I'm sorry. Canadians, the reason why people didn't mind you or the Australians was because we felt that you people understood the fact that you yourselves are unwelcome guests in your lands, that you also do not belong to those lands, that you have just illegally claimed those lands, and that is why you know that you have no right to stop anybody else from coming to those lands. And now when anybody in Australia or Canada try to talk about our country and our constitution and our laws in front of us, yeah. Big mistake that. Big mistake. You know the only reason why you couldn't fully conquer Africa or Asia? Our population. Yeah. It is very unfortunate for the Aborigines, the Maoris in Australia, New Zealand, for the Native Americans, the Red Indians in America and Canada. It's very unfortunate for them that they were such a small population. They were a very small population, and then you went and you started exterminating them. You committed ethnic cleansing and genocide. Yeah. You couldn't do that in Africa or in Asia or in Middle East because our population was too much for you to control, and there was no space for you. There was no empty lands. There were, there were no untouched virgin lands or virgin soils for you to wreak havoc with, So yeah, that's why you couldn't invade our countries properly. You couldn't settle in our countries because we outnumbered you. But very, very unfortunate for the Native Americans and Native Australians that they had the bad fortune to have you people set into their lands while you were looking for the golden sparrow called India under the Muslim rule. And you decided to wreak havoc because the population was very, very small and easy for you to exterminate. You should be ashamed of yourselves when you try to talk about Canada, America, Australia as your country. They're not your countries, okay? Your countries are in Europe. You need to go back there and then talk to us from there. And you would actually look nice doing that. Yeah. It's shameful. Absolutely shameful. That is, I'm sorry. Again, if it was really your country, and if you really were natives of your own country, 100% I would agree with you and sympathize with you. I still agree with you and sympathize with you that it doesn't matter whose land it is, people need to live with a civic sense, people need to live with decency, people need to consider one another. And yes, nobody has the right to create disturbance. But when you bring in the identity card, I have a problem with you. I have a huge problem with you. I'm sorry. How dare you? This is me signing out. Khuda Hafiz.